This is Shonna Dorsey with
Jeff Slobotski and
Jona Van Deun.
Awesome.
Shonna, welcome. We did great.
Thanks.
That was good. Great to have you. Great to see you today.
Always a pleasure.
Excellent.
Thanks.
So we're going to just jump right into it. Jona Van Deun is the president of the Nebraska Tech Collaborative, and we would love to hear more about what that is, what you're working on, and whatever you want to share about it.
That's great. You guys are great. Wonderful. Thank you. As most of you know, the Nebraska Tech Collaborative started about a year and a half ago. I came on board October of 2019 as its first president, and it's a group of business leaders, educators, nonprofit organizations, and education entities who are concerned about the tech talent ecosystem in the state. Nebraska, we've got a lot of great, smart, brilliant people. However, but they have a tendency to leave the state because there's this perception that there aren't enough opportunities. We've got a lot of great companies. We've got a great story to tell. So the Nebraska Tech Collaborative, the NTC, as I'm going to call it from now on, we're trying to help bring more light to these types of things. So how do we inspire more kids in PK through 12? How do we get if you want a career in tech, what's that path forward for you? We want to be able to articulate that to people. And maybe you're sitting at work and you thought, maybe I do want a career in tech. How do I do that? We are available to kind of help figure that out. But what makes this thing so interesting is that this is business led. And a lot of times my perception after being here for a short time is that everything's in a silo. Everybody's doing a lot of great work, but we're just not talking to each other enough, and we're not collaborating enough. And so if we as the business community can do a better job at articulating to education or nonprofits or PK through 12 what we need and the types of workers that we need and this talent and the skills that they need, that's a great thing. And so it's our job to figure out how to create those for our workers and the people in the state. So that's very long, but that's kind of what we're doing here. We got a lot of stuff going.
Awesome.
That's good. That's really good. No, I love it. And Jonna, it's been really exciting to get a chance to work with you. I know, Sean and I kind of working at building the ecosystem, if you will, for a number of years. Could you give folks just a little bit of your background as well? Because I think it's fascinating kind of, the roles in which you played in the past and then how it kind of parlayed into what you're doing now in our state as well.
So I've had more jobs than anybody should ever have. I think I've had over 22. I think my kids counted one day at the breakfast table. So I was born and raised in Lincoln, went to high school, Lincoln Southeast, go Knights, and graduated never to return again. Not sure what the opportunities were for me. I didn't think I had a lot of options. And so I made my way to a private women's college in central Minnesota. My first job out of college was working for President George Herbert Walker Bush as a staff assistant. I've held jobs at the House Ways and Means Committee in Congress. I have worked for companies like Pillsbury and 3M doing government affairs type work. I was the head of operations for the Republican National Convention in 2000 in Philadelphia, 2004 in New York. I've had my own business working on a women's conference series. I ended up traveling overseas. I worked as the social secretary and community liaison officer for the consul general for the U.S. consulate in Lagos, Nigeria. And ended up having these two kids, and I couldn't travel as much as I wanted to. So I kind of reimagined all the great things that I like to do for my job as it pertains to government affairs. And so I went into the advocacy space, which has served me very well. It's basically understanding what people care about, what they want, what they need in order to achieve their goals. So I became the director of advocacy and coalitions for Koch Industries, the brothers, not the drink, and left that and went to the United States Chamber to work on advocacy programs for small business. I think we all forget sometimes, a lot of the big companies have a little bit more bandwidth to go create opportunities with elected officials, but there are more small businesses in America, and they need to be able to speak up and tell their elected officials what they want. So I did that for a while. And then my husband came home and said, we're moving to Nebraska. And I said, I'll miss you. And he said, no, we're all going. I never thought I would return here, but it's been the best decision we've ever made. And I couldn't imagine spending COVID anywhere else because we've had more space and we've been able to move around a little bit better. But again, part of it too is this job is really fun. So we haven't stopped during COVID. I think we've gotten a little bit busier in trying to figure out opportunities or ways to talk about all the forward-looking things instead of dwelling on how horrible this is, but really looking forward, saying, okay, we in the tech community are able to, this is what's available to us. And if you're a company from somewhere else, come on down. It's probably a little bit easier to do business here than other places in the country. So that's my life. It's pretty boring.
Good.
Yep.
So speaking of startups and small businesses, Jeff, as you know, has a strong startup background, lots of work with entrepreneurs locally and nationally and beyond. What do you think are some of the ways in which we can better support some of those smaller companies from the NTC's view and maybe even some of your prior experiences? What do you think?
Yeah, it took me a little bit longer to get to that. And that's a great question because initially I think I was like, we just need to start collaborating more. We need to do more. But what I'm also discovering here being in Nebraska is that there are two types of entrepreneurs. It's the diamonds of the rough, people that didn't understand or knew that they could be entrepreneurs and creating that kind of opportunity for them to discover that. But what I think where NTC needs to play is I think we need to do a better job of reaching out to the serial entrepreneur and creating a better space for people to go and create businesses, step out of those businesses and create more. And how do we connect serial entrepreneurs, not only with each other, but with mentorship, money, talent? I think that's going to be a big part of where we go. So that is a great question. I've been fighting with this for a long time, but it wasn't until recently that I figured out that that's where I think that's where we can add value.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. And I think Shonna and I have talked about this numerous times, and Jona, you and I as well, around this idea of density, right? Like connecting the dots between the resources that exist, not only within our own backyard, but within the city, within the state, within the region and beyond, right? So it's like, all right, how are we going to position ourselves to support our own, if you will, but how do we position ourselves as a city, state, and region, to kind of message and market that we're here, there's opportunities here, and, we should consider Nebraska, right, as an opportunity.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I think this is the best kept secret. And I think I don't know if it's that kind of humble Midwestern, we can't tell anybody what's really great about this place. It is. I mean, nobody wants to talk about it. Like you start talking, right. Even during COVID, people were like, I'm like, we're doing a lot better than most places in the country. We didn't have a shutdown order. We were restricted on where we could go. But we were all still doing business, and we saw some of our friends have to lay off workers, and that was really heartbreaking and sad. But also too, we saw businesses that were doing okay or doing great, especially on the tech side, because I think people are looking at a lot of the projects that they should have started and wanted to start it. It was kind of like, we'll get to that. The tech stuff was always like, we'll get to that. Like it's something fancy. It's nice to have, but now people are seeing like, you have to have this stuff. You have to find different ways to work. You have to find different ways to connect with people. And again, I just think that we've definitely risen to the occasion here.
It's good.
Yeah, I love talking about this stuff because I think, to your point, a lot of companies have said, okay, we can have a remote workforce and people do still get stuff done. And they're not just watching Netflix all day, maybe a little bit, but they were listening, they were walking between meetings and wasting time in other ways, So anyway, do you think that, and I'm assuming the answer is going to be yes, but I'm more curious about how do you think we get there? So we now have a lot of companies that are obviously open to remote workforce, like I just mentioned, but then also folks who could potentially move here and work for other companies, but we have this kind of broadband, this access issue, What do you think are some things that you see on the horizons or projects we could consider to help address some of that to attract more people here?
Right. So I do think that we need to, this sounds bad, but we need to collectively coalesce around three or four really big things that can transform the way we do our work in the state. I think broadband is a great example. We all talk about it. Nobody really understands it. If you do understand it, you tell other people, like, let us do this. We wrote an article on our blog about broadband availability and some of the challenges people were having, not only for work, but for kids schooling from home. And so you talk to one group and you're like, we have plenty. But then you talk to people who don't have any, or who are struggling to keep the signals up. Like, there's something that we've got to be able to do. We have a lot of providers in the state. How do we get those folks involved in saying, how do we help? Like, we've covered most of the state. We've covered around the edges and the big populations. Now what can we do to start making a plan to get to some of these smaller communities to create broadband? So I think it's one of the things that we're looking at here. We're kind of in a weird position here at the NTC. So we are a workforce initiative, a part of the Exarban Foundation. So we are housed in Exarban. We are a 501c3 within Exarban. And so, but what we can't advocate, but we can educate people on really, how does this work? You know, how much broadband do you need to run a Netflix movie, and how much do you need to run your computer? And we just need to do a better job, I think, at educating people. I also think we need to not let it be such a big secret about things like the ecosystem itself. So how you find funding in the ecosystem, because there's two, and Jeff, you're a serial entrepreneur, so you know this, like, you figured out all the kind of the pathways in order to getting things done. But they'll tell you right now, there's like, somebody will tell you, this is the way it's done in Nebraska. But then there's somebody like you that says, this is how it really gets done. So how do we connect? How do we articulate or create transparency around, this is how you become an entrepreneur in the state of Nebraska, instead of it being such a big secret? And I probably shouldn't have said that, but
no,
that's the way I look at it. And then the other thing is, I think we need to, if we get more companies, so one of the goals is the NTC is to bring 10,000 new tech jobs to the state. And of those 10,000, 40% should be women, 20% should definitely come from underrepresented groups. And I think that number can be higher. But what we need to do is get people to speak up a little bit more about, if we had access to broadband, if we had more professional opportunities, what incentives could we create around ag tech, fintech, healthcare tech? Because we're number one, like, we're great at healthcare, we're great at finance and insurance, we're amazing at ag, but the piece that's missing is us in tech trying to demonstrate to people that these things are available and you can use them. And if you do use them, we've got the people here in the state that can help maintain them or fix them or make them better. So yeah, I'm crazy like this. I love this stuff. This is so much fun. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. I don't think it should take years. I think there are a lot of interventions that we can do right now. But it's going to take some time. But I think that's, the more people we get here, the more companies we get here, the more jobs we get here.
I agree. And I think your education is key, like, about the options. So that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, then wouldn't it be cool if we could get finding companies all around the state and finding teachers all around the state, and it doesn't matter where you live to get that experience, and say you can pluck somebody from Sydney, Nebraska. They've got a great internet connection, by the way. Sydney, Nebraska, to somebody here in Omaha and do some type of cool teacher externship. So, or finding, there are a lot of, again, Nebraskans have big hearts and they're just really part of the community. There are a lot of people who are working on cool things here in town who want to give back, who might want to teach some of these classes. I know, Shonna, you do this a lot, where you go into the school and you teach, and and show these kids like the endless possibilities. Like we need to do more of that across the state. So
I agree.
Yeah,
and,
that's
and
good.
help
That's
people
really good.
get
That's
there.
really good. No, I agree, Jonna. I mean, spot on too. And right, it's like, it's kind of eliminating the barriers or like lowering the hurdles, whatever analogy you want to use for somebody who's interested in like getting involved in tech and in entrepreneurship, right? Sean and I were just talking earlier about the idea of, you know, focusing on students, yes, but also focusing on those within career transition, right? And I think that's something you and I spoke on as well. It's like, all right, somebody that's maybe let go, laid off, or no longer interested in working for a company because they put in their time, but yet with a short amount of training, whatever that looks like, they're a very highly in demand individual or employee, right, at another company or high growth tech company here in the state. So it's like, how do we do some of that work as well? So yeah.
But even socializing some of this stuff, and I think everybody,
Right.
I know a lot of the folks in the tech community are like, oh, but socializing this with kids, like when I took this job, I'm telling my 11-year-old, like, hey, I've got this great job. I'm going to head up this tech nonprofit. It's going to be a lot of things. I'm like, have you ever thought about a job in tech? And her response to me was, well, I'd have to wear glasses. And I was kind of like, what? I don't get it. But the perception that it is computers, but it's also artificial intelligence. It's all of these really great things. And how do you socialize these ideas? Because the other thing, I don't think this is exclusive to tech either. I think we need to be able to articulate what opportunities are available. And so after having this job for a few months, I kind of went back to figure out, like, what does my kid care about? So she cares about dance. I was like, you could come up with some new type of app or some way of having a better experience virtually for your classes. Like you could come up with something so amazing. And when I put it in those types of contexts of something that she cared about with something that's future, forward looking, it was kind of like, oh, that would be cool. And so now it's like, wouldn't it be cool if, well, how would I build that? That's pretty awesome. And if we can keep, again, getting kids excited about this stuff and not saying you have to take this job, but we want you to think a little bit more expansively and more flexible to take these things. I think it's fun. I think it helps them.
I agree.
And they've had plenty of time to sit inside and think about this stuff, let me tell you.
Exactly. Time to do.
That's true.
Yeah.
And yeah, even your job as the president of NTC it's in tech, so you're not a programmer, but you're still, this role is very critical to the future of the tech community, period. So, yep.
Well, again, I've had a lot of experience in government affairs, advocacy, sales, whatnot. And I always laugh because I never saw myself here. But the cool thing about it is I know how to build stuff. Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build something that's transformational for the entire state, to increase the economic prosperity for all Nebraskans. I mean, that's our goal. That's all we want. And if, I remember her interviewing for this job and somebody said, you don't have a tech background. And I was kind of like, nope, I can build stuff, but I can't. No. And so that was a little bit of a learning curve. And I'm sure people look at me like, you don't know what that is or that is.
Yeah.
Again, the more people like me that understand what this ecosystem does and can socialize that across the state, I think we're going to be served really well.
I agree with that for sure. So, Jeff, I think this is like one of our longest interviews. This has been super.
I'm sorry.
No, this is great. I love it.
No apologies. No, this
I'll
is good.
ask one more question, and then Jeff, if you have a wrap up too, that'd be awesome. But this is my favorite question on the list that I wanted to ask Jonna today, which is, if resources were not an issue, what is the one project you think you would tackle right now in Nebraska, like for the benefit of Nebraskans? What would that project look like?
Oh my gosh, I'd create the biggest marketing campaign that you would ever see in your life, talking about the companies, the people, the talent. The one thing my one observation about living here is that's the first thing to go on every single project. You run out of money, you're trying to put something together, you talk about the marketing PR and everybody's like, oh, no, we don't want to do that. We'll just get to it later. No, I would market the crap out of this state. And and if I had unlimited funds, I'd take a delegation to all the surrounding states, going to see every business, every ad campaign, and talking about how great Nebraska is. That's what I would be doing.
That is so interesting. And, I think
Good.
that speaks to your point about the humble Nebraskan deal, because that is real, but the marketing is so important. So I agree. Awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I agree with you too. And like, I really agree with you, actually. It was funny because, used to be involved in an effort to kind of to do that, right? And I feel, Jonna, it's kind of waned, if you will, for some time, but there's a lot of activity. And so it's like, yeah, what are we doing to continue to collectively, I think too, right? Not individually based upon, hey, investors working hard at it or universities working hard at it, but collectively as a community, doing it. So yeah.
Yeah, but we don't have that kind of money. So now what I would do, because again, we don't have millions of dollars, which again, I would love. And if anybody wants to give them to us, that would be great. But I think we need to be more strategic about talking to founders and entrepreneurs and businesses, and being more strategic about how we go and talk about this ecosystem. So
right.
I would love to get a group together and go around the state and talk about tech and not only like how great we are, but how can we be helpful? We have a lot of businesses. We have a lot of CEOs, CIOs, CFOs, a lot of entrepreneurs who have the decision rights to go into these communities and say, I want to help, or I want to do that. We should be having letters to the editor in the paper every single week talking about how great we are in tech and what we're doing in McCook and what we're doing in North Platte and what we're doing in Scottsbluff, what we're doing in Omaha and Lincoln, Columbus. This should be front and center all the time, because this is the opportunity for us for growth. And that's what we should be doing.
No, I agree. I agree. And you look at other cities too that have done this. Ohio, there's a couple, I think in Minnesota as well, but regardless, like there's cities now, they'll pay you $10,000 to move to the city, right?
Oklahoma.
You've got to come with a job, right? Oklahoma, right? So everywhere around us except Nebraska right now, maybe we can get this up and running, but it's to say, hey, you bring the job with you, right? But we're going to help you $10,000, moving cost wherever it is. So, I'm not so set on whatever the parameters are, but this idea of marketing yourself, this isn't about $100 million marketing campaign. I mean, cities are doing this with $10,000 out of the pot, right? So yeah, I love it. It's,
yeah. I wish I could take credit for the idea, but actually it was Governor Prairie of Texas actually did this when their surrounding states started raising taxes. He did a whole marketing campaign, radio, TV, print, going to these locales and saying, come to Texas. These are the incentives that we've got. Sure. We will defer this. Why Toyota moved? You're in Texas. Yeah. You've got all these tech companies in Austin. Why? Because he was going around all of those states, going to the East Coast, the West Coast, big cities, talking about how great the quality of life or better quality of life was in the state. And you've got, and their infrastructure has increased exponentially. They've got more space, but they're no better or smarter than we are. Right. I just think we have an opportunity.
I agree. The last question I've got to wrap things up, and how can we, Sean and I, but I would say we collectively, the community, whoever listens to this, help you support kind of the efforts if there's anything that comes to mind. And we will link the Nebraska Tech Collaborative website and social and blog and everything into the article. But yeah, other ways that we can be supportive as a community.
I really want the stories. Again, we have a lot of great big companies who are supporting us at the NTC, but we need a lot more of the serial entrepreneurs and small and mid-sized companies to join our committees. Here's your chance to say, this is the kind of person you need to work for your company. We need more ideas. We need, we just need more people. The reason I'm able to punch above my weight in this job is because the way we work on this committee structure that was created before I got here, but I actually like it, where you've got business leaders and education leaders and nonprofit presidents sitting in the same room talking about this will work, this will not work. We'd like to try this. And so we just need more of that. We need more people. We need more entrepreneurs. But I really like to get, we want the stories. We want to hear what you're up to so we can scream it far and wide and highlight what folks are doing here. Awesome.
Very good. Jona, thanks for carving out time out of your day. Always good to talk to you. And yeah, very, very excited for where we're headed as a state with you in charge and leading the Tech Collaborative for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know where we're headed, but we're going to have a lot of fun trying to get there. So that's the best I can do.
Awesome. Well, good. Well, Jona, thank you again.
Guys.
You bet. Absolutely. We'll talk to you here soon.
Got it. Thanks, guys.